Great Marcus Garvey. Shout out. Feel free to put happy birthday inside the chat, inside the comments you are watching live. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. My name is Devon Travell, Director of Curriculum and Community Development for IMI. Pleasure, my privilege to be here this evening with you all. We're going to have a special guest come on in because I am not the Marcus Garvey expert. All right. Huge inspiration, right? But I'm not a Marcus Garvey expert. So I made sure I found someone who can really teach y'all and go into the details and go over some facts about Brother Garvey's life, his impact, and just what he means and meant to the African diaspora. But if you haven't already, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know what city you are from and maybe your favorite Black history figure, right? And if you got a few, drop them all. All right, that's all good. But I know we had somebody from Chicago earlier. We're out here in Moreno Valley, Riverside area of California. But go ahead and put inside the comments, whether you're on Facebook or you're on YouTube. Just let us know where you are joining in from. All right. So getting into it before we have our esteemed guest join right now. Hey, how y'all doing? Thank y'all for joining. Before we have our esteemed guest, I do want to introduce you to what IMI is. A lot of y'all already know what Play Black Wall Street is. Maybe you've heard of Play Black Wall Street Academy, but you might not be aware of what Institute of Melanated Innovation is. I'm gonna go through some quick slides while our guest finds his way here, and then we will get into today's class. That sound good? Sound all right? Mm. Quick side note. I've been denying myself prescription glasses all my life. I don't know why. I finally got prescription glasses and it's a whole new world, y'all. It is a whole new world. All right, we got Tacoma, Washington in the building. Welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining. Again, we got Chicago in the building. Shout out, shout out. All right, so let's get into it, y'all. If you didn't know, Institute of Melanated Innovation, or IMI, we were created for two main reasons. One is to create increase of access to Black Studies courses and experiences for our K through 12 youth and community members, just like this. When I was growing up, and I'm sure possibly when some of my older folks on here were growing up, access to Black Studies wasn't a thing, right? But now in 2020, 2022, it's becoming a little bit more acceptable within K through 12, but we need more access to knowledge of ourselves, our amazing history, knowledge of Mansa Musa and the Empire of Mali, knowledge of Tulsa's Black Wall Street and Greenwood, knowledge of Chicago's Black Wall Street and Bronzeville. I don't know if there was a Black Wall Street in Washington. Let me know, educate me, right? But we need to be able to grow up and know about this knowledge. So that is why IMI, Institute of Melanation Innovation, was created. Number two, we will serve as a think tank and research center focused on solving the problems and improving life within the Black community. How can we intentionally make sure we are solving the problems within our community for us, by us? Shout out to FUBU. All right. We got three options for membership if you're interested in increasing your access to Black study knowledge. We have the IMI All Access Pass. This is the best bang for your buck. You get access to all the live events, the field trips, and we just came back from Greenwood, just came back from Black Wall Street. You get access to the new courses every single semester, and of course, all of the old courses will be on there for you as well. If you're really zoomed in and you are focused on entrepreneurship, and you want to build your own business, you're a high school student, you're a middle school student, you're a college student, and you want to learn how to really start your business, how to brand your business, we got your back. Play Black Wall Street Academy is the one for you. That one will focus on courses, experiences, and community building all around entrepreneurship and business development. And if you just want a little bit of a snack, right? You just want to learn a little bit of Black studies here and there. You don't want a lot. You don't want a lot of commitment to it, but you do want to learn a little bit. You're going to want to make sure you tap into your Black study snacks. All right. These are nice bite-sized Black history components for you. All right. Now, today, have some success tips. All right. If you're watching this course, hopefully you have a notepad ready, right? Or you just can take notes here. All right, go ahead and put inside the chat. What type of learner are you? Or are you the type of person who likes videos and graphics and you can just really digest a lot from that? Are you a person who needs to write down those notes in order for it to really sink in? Are you the type of person that needs to move around and like create for it to really sink in? Go ahead and let us know what type of learning environment or learning resources do you need to be successful? Me personally, I need video, I need movement, I need maybe a song or two, right? But I need some extra stimulation when it comes to my learning. Right? And that's what we try to do here in IMI. We try to give you different ways of learning the information. So feel free to put inside the chat, what do you need to learn? Okay. Some tips to be successful. One, be active and engaged with the content. Answer questions, attempt the readings, ask questions, especially today when we have our guests come on. If you have questions about Marcus Garvey, put it in the chat. Right? If you got questions about other historical figures or other things that you want to learn within Black history, put it in the chat. All right, go ahead and let's make sure you stay engaged and stay active. Number two, as best as you can, apply the content that you are learning to your real life. Right? This isn't just about, learning some Black history and then be like, okay, that was cool. Take the wisdom, the journey, the experience of the late and great Marcus Garvey and figure out, okay, what are some things that I can use for me? What are some things that I don't want to use? Right? I want that to stay right there with Brother Garvey. And what are some things where you're like, whoa, I need to tell people about that. Right? Be active and be engaged with the learning. All right, let me go to these comments really quickly. Let's see. Love great lectures. Great lectures is good. Great lectures is good. I used to listen to those audiobooks. Right? Okay. So today we have a course from Eric, the keeper of the gems. This man is a historian out in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Shout out to Atlanta. Just tons of great energy out there in Atlanta. Tons of great people. We're going to be visiting Atlanta in 2 weeks. Labor Day weekend, we'll be in ATL. So if there's some things that we need to tap in with, if there's some restaurants that we need to visit, museums that we need to visit, definitely send us a list, comment below. And yeah, me and the Queen, we love food. So definitely restaurants, let us know. But we do have Brother Eric here, the keeper of the jewels, who will do a live course with us to go through some of the life, some of the legacy, and some of the impact that Marcus Garvey has had on our society. Okay. So please, y'all, help me give a warm welcome inside the chat. You can clap, you can dance, you can do a hoorah, all that good stuff wherever you are, to my brother right here, Brother Eric. I'm bringing him on right now. Oh, here it is. How you living, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Hey, I'm blessed. No complaints over here. I do need some good food tonight. It's been a day and I need
I'm
food.
sure. Same here.
Yes, hey.
Same here.
But I appreciate you, working with your schedule to make this course happen for us. We got some people from Chicago here, some people from Washington here. If you're just joining, go ahead and rep your city inside of the chat. Let us know so we can give you a shout out. But the floor, the discussion is all yours, brother.
Oh, I see it over here. Okay. Yeah, no, I was trying to figure out where the chat so I could actually see the people and kind of interact. So I'm excited now. Can you
Oh, yeah.
guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I
Okay,
got
cool.
you.
All right, perfect. So, how do you want to start off this evening? Today is a monumental, a monumental day. Today is the 135th birthday of Marcus Mosiah Garvey.
Mm.
So it's a pretty amazing day for us as a people, and in history.
Oh, yeah, that's
135 years.
and what So what do you love? And I know we'll get into it. We're going to show your presentation, but when it comes to the legacy of Marcus Garvey, what are just things that stand out to you to make him just someone who's historic, right? Someone who's
Mhm.
legendary efforts for you. You're an historian. There's tons of people that you could be researching. Why, Brother Garvey?
Man, many reasons. Some of them are, he was the world's greatest Black leader,
Mm,
literally. There's nobody that has achieved um, Black unity like Marcus Garvey. For those that preceded him in the Pan-Africanist movement or Black nationalist movement, for those that did the quote unquote Back to Africa movement and have moved people there, there's been nobody on the face of the planet in time that
mm,
has united Black people the world over. So that's the most important thing about Garvey, and I think that's one of the things that drew me to him. Um, Electrical, like just it was like electricity. I can't even pinpoint when I came into knowledge of who Marcus Garvey was. I can't even tell you. But what I do remember is I was drawn to him like electricity, and just started collecting his pieces or pieces of his history before I even knew exactly who he was. So that's kind of what drew me to him and the things that he did in the short period of time that he did it, and the major impact that it's had. Being that Garvey has literally influenced every Black movement
mm,
to date. Even Black Lives Matter stems from, the Garvey movement. There's immediate people that are immediate spin-offs or, Garveyites at heart. You have Elijah Muhammad and his brother. You have Malcolm X, which I would have gotten into further. We'll get into that a lot further. But
yeah.
Malcolm X, his family, his father was actually the president of the local chapter of the UNIA, and his mother was the secretary. So he actually was a Garveyite, grew up in a Garveyite household. So a lot of the things that he was exposed to as a child is another one of the reasons why he was drawn to the Nation of Islam.
Yeah, when you say Garveyite, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah, so Garveyite is basically just a follower of Garvey, of his philosophy of Pan Africanism, Black nationalism. Basically, your belief that to be Black, live Black, buy Black, uh, in Garvey's words,
Mm,
the Black Panthers, everything. So everything is has been a spinoff of it. But a Garveyite is basically a follower of the principles and philosophy of Garvey, and that's just basically, literally being Black, buying Black, supporting Black, and everything else he said will take care of itself.
okay. Without further ado, let me see if I can show your
Oh,
presentation.
and actually, while we're pulling that up, I'll actually explain while I have this hat on. This actual hat, I just cut my hair too, so nobody really knows I cut my hair. But this hat actually is one of my pieces from the museum, and
Mm,
on it is Marcus Garvey's actual signature. So I took that from one of the documents
wow.
in the collection. On the side here is Malcolm X's autograph from one of the documents in the collection. Rosa Parks, let's see here, Rosa Parks there. Martin Luther King. On the inside of the hat is actually Booker T. Washington's signatures as well. And then one of my favorite pieces from the collection here is actually under the bill is the Black Panthers. This is actually to be Black in America is to be revolutionary. That's Huey P. Newton. And so that's why I have on my ancestors hat. I like to keep myself covered and keep my mind covered as it relates to just being under the ancestors under the safety of the ancestors and under the wisdom. So I like to keep them on me
Oh
and
yeah.
with me at all times.
Well, you're getting some love in the chat for the hat. Yeah, that's a one of a kind piece right there for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you
It's all available on the site.
Yeah. So can you let folks know what your website is and what is the keeper of the jewels, or what is your museum?
Okay, so I have the pleasure of being who Dick Gregory named as the keeper of the jewels for my commitment to um, preserving and keeping our history alive. To date, I've spent my life savings buying back Black history artifacts from white collectors. I have over 15,000 pieces of original Black history artifacts or American history artifacts from a Black perspective. And you can check out everything at the website is blackhistoryarchives.com. You can go on there, and at the end of the slide, you'll also have all the contact information for my social medias to stay in contact and all those good things. So that's how I got my name, and just living up to the assignment that the ancestors and God have entrusted me with.
All right, so big assignment by Brother Gregory, but you got it. You already.
By that time already, I had considered myself one of the gatekeepers. So I never really thought about it, as something until he said it. And in the video clip, on my website or whatever, you'll see a couple of different videos from Dick Gregory. But we were sitting there talking, and it wasn't until he actually said to me, he was like, you will be the keeper of the jewels, and you'll hear a gasp in the background, and that's actually me gasping because I realized like the weight of what he said. I always thought that was the case, and that's who I was. But for him to put it in the terms of the keeper of the jewels instead of just like the gatekeeper of the history, that sounds really weird. But that's what I always felt like I was anyway. And so I have the definitive collection of Marcus Garvey, definitive collections of Malcolm X, definitive collections of Madam C.J. Walker, definitive collections of anyone
hearing this?
College, the definitive Martin Luther King collection, and then one of my definitives, but it doesn't mean that much only because there's limited material, and that's the definitive Lorraine Hansberry collection because she died at the age of 36 from cancer, so there's not much out there. And then also one of my collections that's not necessarily definitive but extensive is my Black Panther collection and a few others, but we can talk about that another time.
Oh yeah, no, listen, y'all, don't worry. I know a lot of y'all are thinking like, we want to learn all this stuff. We don't have time. Listen, today we're going to do an intro of Marcus Garvey. We will bring the keeper of the jewels back. This man needs to come back to teach y'all. If you're just joining, make sure you go ahead and put what city you are repping inside of the chat. And we are about to be blessed by the keeper of the jewels tonight on the legacy history of Brother Marcus Garvey.
All right. So what we're doing today, this is, again, as we said, this is the 135th birthday celebration for Marcus Garvey. So we're just going to start off with a few facts. We're going to do a dozen facts. And this is just the introduction. There's so much to talk about with Garvey. There's more than there's too much time. So this would literally take probably a whole month's class to really understand the magnitude and the depth and all the amazing contributions that Garvey has made to world society. But after today, you should come out of this session with the following learning outcomes. You'll know who Marcus Garvey was. You'll be able to distinguish the facts of Garvey's actual contributions against what historical revisionist history has to say, and how they've just reduced him to being being jailed. Okay, and then also the last outcome will be that you'll be able to understand a lot of key events in the life and times of Garvey's. So right here to the right is a fun fact. Both of Garvey's wives' first names were Amy. His first wife is right there on the right-hand side. That was Amy Ashwood Garvey, and his second wife and mother of his children was Amy Jakes Garvey, and you'll see her there on the left. All right, so the first slide, the first question or first fact that we're going to do is, did you know that Marcus Garvey was born on August the 17th, 1887 in St. Anne's Bay, Jamaica, to Sarah Jane Richards and Marcus Garvey Sr. So his mother was a domestic worker and actually came from, and I hate the term, but they say it's a peasant family, farmers. They came from farmers. And his father was a stonemason, and his actual father's side are descendants of the Maroons. So he comes from, he has just an amazing line that he came from. His father was quite a recluse and also was a self-learned man. And he had a major book collection that Garvey actually, really, really loved. And that was the one thing that they had in common. Garvey was one of 11 children, but only he and his older sister, Indiana, actually lived to adulthood. The rest of them died during childhood.
And when you say he was the descendant from the Maroons, from people
Mm-hmm.
who might not know who the
Oh,
Maroons
yes.
were.
Okay, so that's going to be homework. So check out who the Maroons were, but the Maroons were actually part of the group of people that fought for the independence of the Jamaican people.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a fantastic history. We've never embraced enslavement at any point along the transatlantic slave trade. Every place they dropped us off, we've always rebelled and revolted and actually fought for our rights. So that's kind of a myth that we were cool with servitude. We've never been cool with it. And there's documented but undocumented history of the revolts that have taken place through the years, and that's something that we will definitely be covering later on as well. So yeah, if you have any questions, guys, go ahead and drop some questions in the box. We'll definitely get around to them. I don't like to just talk to people. I kind of like it to be interactive. So if there's a way that you have some questions, I'll stop once I complete my thoughts, and we'll address the questions real time. So definitely want it to be interactive. All right, so the next one, we're at number 2. Did you know that Marcus Garvey actually traveled extensively across Jamaica, the Caribbean, the UK, Central and South America, and those were between the years of 1903 and 1912. So this was how he was able to actually go all over these different areas and see how Black people were treated, unfair and inhumane. And that was one of the reasons why he became the activist that he did. He even tried to form some of the first unions in Central and South America during that time as well, and in Jamaica, and kind of started his activist, ways. So that was actually a really cool fact that a lot of people don't know, which was why he was so much of a uniter. But also he realized that it wasn't just the plight of those in the Caribbean. It wasn't just Jamaica. He from there, his first job was as an apprentice for his godfather, which happened to be one of his maternal uncles. And he got to. It was a printing business that he had, so he was a printing apprentice. And once he went to Costa Rica and Panama and everything, he launched some of the first Black-owned newspapers there. Mm-hmm. And that was his trade. He also worked on several fruit plantations and really got to see how we were treated. And most of it was because of the color of our skin. Some were, of the mulatto, class. In the Caribbean, it was more so a class system as opposed to, American colorism and racism. But this thing was all the same. We were all mistreated. Just being Black in general. And that was one of the things that he found across the board everywhere he went, including in London. And during the time that he went in 1912, there weren't that many Black people there. So he was a representation there. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go to, that's one of the slides. Let me wait on that.
But
I can literally talk about it.
Yeah, I do want to highlight, you said, first off, huge statement. You said he was the best, greatest leader, Black leader that we've had in history. Mm-hmm. And seeing the fact that he's traveled, he's seen a lot of the African diaspora. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's probably the number one reason why he was such a great leader? Because Absolutely. He's seen so many different experiences?
Absolutely. When you have that experience and you see all the deplorable types of treatment, and the only uniting factor is the skin, skin color. We're all descendants, from Africa. We're all a part of the African diaspora. So once he saw that, and it was something that was all across the board, that's when he created the UNIA. And for those that are not aware of that organization is the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And that was the organization that he put together along with his girlfriend at the time, which was his first wife later on, and about 3 or 4 other of his friends in Jamaica. So the first one, which you'll see on the slides, was actually founded in Jamaica in 1914. So we've covered this part here. So you got to see a little bit of the travel pattern there on that one. And I mentioned his travel to London. So 1912 is when he actually embarked to London, and he took night classes at Birkbeck College there. And while he was also there, remember I told you his trade, by trade, he was, printing, a publisher. So by this time, he had already done a newspaper that didn't do well, that had, failed. But also he had worked on and launched 2 other newspapers in the Caribbean, and had a magazine as well. So now he's in London, and he's under the tutelage of Duce, and actually that's a typo there, but Duce Muhammad Ali. And they established the African Times and Orient Review. That was a magazine, a journal. And this was the first political journal that was produced for and by the original FUBU of printing. And that was in Britain.
Yeah.
So that's a really good fact for people. Duce Muhammad was really one of the first Pan-Africanists. And he was one of the ones that actually, Pan-Africanists and also Black nationalists, that really introduced Garvey to this concept also, and kind of schooled him on those that preceded him, and really had the vision for a Back to Africa movement. And I'll get on that. I'll talk about that a little bit later, for the misconceptions for what they, really chiseled down to the Back to Africa movement. It's not exactly what has been told with revisionist history.
Okay.
So number four, did you know that while in London, Garvey read and was influenced by Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery book? This experience actually led to him corresponding with Booker T. Washington. And eventually Washington sent him an invitation to come visit Tuskegee. One of the things that Garvey wanted to do at the time was to create a Tuskegee in Jamaica. So his main thing was actually about teaching people trades, and that's kind of where him and Du Bois kind of had, butted heads. They thought it was going to be an intellectual thing and that everybody needed to go to college. And Garvey was on the stance that, yes, you need to get educated, but it needs to be with a trade. So for any nation, any country, in order to function, has to have these particular tools or these trades in order to build: manufacturing, plumbing, all these different aspects. And that was one of the things that, Tuskegee trained people for, farming, all these different trades that were needed to actually sustain and build a nation. And that was one of the things that Garvey was about, was building a nation here, but also creating the United States of Africa.
And has anyone come close to creating a United States of Africa, or even pushing that message aside from Marcus Garvey?
Well, there has been others that came down the way. So Garvey's in hip hop or whatever, how some of the rappers talk about some of the younger rappers are their sons and everything. Garvey has a lot of sons out there.
Okay.
And some of those include like the actual first Black presidents of African countries. And a lot of them did get together. Kwame Nkrumah is one of them that actually got in for Ghana. South African leader Nelson Mandela was influenced by him. There's so many, people that were actually influenced by him. So it's a lot to talk about. But Garvey has a lot of sons, and they're the ones that actually kind of fulfilled, and continuing today. We're still fulfilling the dream. So number 5, I feel like what was the one slide before this? I forgot that quick.
Oh, good.
Okay, yeah, that was that. Yes. Okay, perfect. So we did 4 already. And one fact, actually going back to 4, you can leave it on 5, but going back to 4, before Garvey actually got to meet Booker T. Washington died. So when he got to Tuskegee for the meeting, it was Robert Moton, who was then the president that took over after Washington had died. And Garvey really wasn't impressed with him. He was more of a integrationist and a few other things. But let's just say Garvey was not impressed with him and some of the other Black leaders of that time. And from them, Garvey actually went on a speaking tour. and wind up staying. And that's he started that he came in 1916, and did a speaking tour which consisted of over 35 states, where they went to speak and just started rounding up, and then ended up in New York City in Harlem, and creating that as the headquarters and the first division in the United States.
Yeah, look, if y'all have questions, feel free. As you can see, he's flowing, right? He is flowing right now. So if y'all have questions about Marcus Garvey, about the leadership, about the UNIA, feel free to drop those inside the chat, inside the comments, and we can get to them.
Yeah. So how and where did the UNIA get started? Now, I alluded to this earlier because I was getting ahead of myself, but still. Garvey, along with his then girlfriend and later first wife, Amy Ashwood, and several others, about 3 or 4 other of his friends, had established the Universal Negro Improvement Association and the African Communities League in Jamaica on August the 1st, 1914. Now, what's significant about this, as you see on the screen, is it was actually Emancipation Day in the Caribbean. So that was the significance of them establishing this organization on that particular day. So every year, the UNIA, which is still in existence today, still celebrates Emancipation Day, and of course the foundation of the organization in Jamaica in 1914. So some early accomplishments. The very first one from 1918 was the Negro World newspaper. This was the first official organ for the actual organization, the UNIA. Now, the UNIA was more than just an organization at the time. It was actually the establishment of a Black government. That was one of the other things that they did. They made sure that they had the preamble and everything that was necessary to have nationhood. And that was acknowledged for the first time by many countries outside of the United States. And is still recognized as the first Black world government.
Hold, you can't zoom past that. Hold on, wait. Say it one more time, but also just the sovereignty and the power of sovereignty. That, like, can you just kind of dive into a little bit what that means?
Mm-hmm. So they actually in 1920, and this is actually something I did kind of glaze over, and I didn't really mean to do it like that, but 1920, Black folks met for the month of August, the entire month of August. Let me make that a little bit clearer. Over 25,000 people gathered at Liberty Hall, but also, excuse me, let me take that back. 25,000 people met at Madison Square Garden for the actual first annual convention of the Negro people of the world. Okay, and they met in convention for a whole month. You had delegations from all over the world, multiple. I think it was over 2 dozen. It was 2 dozen. No, actually, it was more like 3. 3 dozen delegates from Africa, and then all over the United States. By that time, by 1920, toward the height of the organization, there was upwards of about 6 million people. 4 to 6 million is what they're estimating. Some others say that it's upwards of 11 million, but we don't know. The safe or conservative estimate is between 4 and 6 million Black people across the world at that time were a part of the organization represented by Marcus Garvey. So they met. One of the reasons why they met was because they came up with the Black Bill of Rights. And that was one of the things that was a part of this government. Demands that actually later on the Black Panthers did their 10-point plan from. A lot of that came from the Black Bill of Rights that Marcus Garvey and our ancestors put together in 1920. But as I said, they met for a whole month and came up with all these things. One of the other things that you guys would recognize, you guys know it as the Rgb Flag, which is the red, black, and green flag. That was voted on and created by Marcus Garvey and voted on by our people and accepted as our official flag for our government and of the people. The red is for the blood, the green was for the land, and of course the black was for the people. One of the other things, the reason why Marcus Garvey actually created that was because around that time, the KKK had a song out that was called Every Race Has a Flag But the Coon. And as you know, the coon was a derogatory term that along with the N-word that they referred to us as. So Garvey took that on as a more so as a mission than, you know, to we're all solution oriented. And Garvey said, I'll fix them. And he came up with the flag that we still hold true to our, you know, our culture today. And they voted on that. Of course, I said I spoke about the Black Bill of Rights. All these things were set up so that we would have a government to be able to create the United States of Africa. So the main organ of that organization was the Negro World newspaper. And it had, man, this newspaper was fantastic. This is actually a copy of one of the, the masthead right there that you see is an original from the collection. I have over a dozen of the original Negro World newspapers. And that's one of the headlines of the, one of my favorite newspapers in the collection. And of course, next to it, you guys may have heard of the Black Star Line, but for those that have not, that was the official steamline and cruise, steamship and cruise line. So what Garvey wanted to do was to create international trade amongst Black peoples of the world. So the first ship actually that was a part of the Black Star Line, that was the Yarmouth. It was actually it was called the USS Yarmouth, and that was the first ship that they had acquired, which they actually renamed the Frederick Douglass. And the cool part about that was because the Yarmouth, when it was owned by you know, the previous owners, the government and whoever else owned it, was actually, how do I say it? One of the passengers that frequented that particular ship was Frederick Douglass. So it just happens that, you know, he used to ride on that ship, and once Garvey and the UNIA acquired it, they dedicated it to him in his memory. So that's one of the cool things. Ultimately, there were 5 ships that were actually acquired by Garvey, and revisionist history would make you think that this was actually a failure and no ships were acquired, but that's actually a lie. That's a whole white lie. And you know, white lies are huge. So that was revisionist history. That was part of the taking down of Garvey, and that was one of the things that they actually used, because in October the 11th, 1919, there was this young white guy that was insignificant and happened to be a part of the Bureau of Investigations. And he was a young lawyer and was trying to make a name for himself. And he reported to the Attorney General at the time. And his first memo to his boss was that, and that was on October the 11th, 1919, was that he had feared that there was going to be a messianic uprising black figure, and he thought that was going to be Garvey. And so him and some colored folks, some Black folks got together and were kind of ticked off about Garvey's stance. Now, at the time, you'll know that in 1909, the Niagara movement had started, and that morphed into what's known as the NAACP. And the NAACP was an organization that at the time was really geared to mulatto leadership. It was more so those of a lighter hue, i.e. You had W.E.B. Du Bois, you had A. Philip Randolph, and some of their other cohorts that were all a part of that early movement. There's another gentleman, and his name escapes me at the moment. It'll come to me shortly. But they came together and they actually created the Garvey Must Go campaign, where they actually did the biddings of the FBI and those that did not want to see Black progress. And they actually wrote to the president, to the attorney general, and to the Justice Department on trying to get Garvey deported. So them, along with, the founders of the NAACP. His name almost came back to me because it was Chandler Owens. So it's Chandler Owens, who was W.E.B. Du Bois, and also A. Philip Randolph, who were part of that Garvey Must Go campaign. So that was the first Black on Black crime, as far as I'm concerned. You know, they got together because they felt threatened by their movement because they were integrationists. They believed that, you know, we needed white people and we needed to integrate into society. Garvey was more so a black nationalist, where he said that we needed to depend on ourselves. We needed to have our own everything, and to create our own nationhood. So we needed to have our own industries, our own factories, our own stores, and that was some of the things that he implemented. So going back to the slide, we have you know, the Black Star Line. So one of the things that actually, let's go back to the previous slide. So for the Black Star Line, there was 5 ships in total. The first ship was actually the main one that they used to kind of do trade between the Americas, us here, and also in the Caribbean. So that frequented Cuba, Jamaica, you know, the Caribbean, that was very close by. And we were able to kind of create some international trade amongst us doing that. So that was one of the main lines. There were 5 ships total. And we can go into some of that, but this is just an introduction. So for the sake of time, we won't go into all the different 5 ships, but we will cover that at a later time. So for the next slide, we're going into some of the other early accomplishments of Garvey. And,
Yeah, really quick. I wanted to ask on the Black Star Line. For me, that is a very tangible way to not only connect Black people from all around the world socially, but economically, right? Like, because we look at the natural resources that are in Africa, that are in Ghana, that are in Jamaica, that are all throughout the Caribbean, versus what's in America, and being able to control that supply chain would have been a game changer for our Black economy here.
Absolutely. And it was. It really was. And unfortunately, because of so yeah, I'll go ahead and jump into that, and then we'll kind of get back to it later on. But one of the main things that happened out of this was that the Bureau of Investigations expanded under that dude that I was telling you about, the insignificant young lawyer, which happened to be John E. Hoover, which later became J. Edgar Hoover, the infamous, you know, basically founder of the Federal Bureau of Investigations. It was not a federal thing until he actually came in, and he wanted to create this database and this organization that would be over all these things. And that kind of created a dictatorship, in a sense, that he actually created COINTELPRO, which would later take down every Black movement. And all that was based off of the tactics that he did to take down Marcus Garvey. So that started, Garvey was the first enemy of the state. And it carried on to every single Black leader afterwards, these tactics. So what happened was he infiltrated the UNIA and the Black Star Line, you know, and all the different organizations that fell under the UNIA. And of course, you know, white people couldn't do it. And at that time, they only had white FBI agents. So they hired the first Black FBI agent to infiltrate and take down Garvey's organization. And we can go into some of that stuff later on in another class to talk about more details, but that was how the FBI created the COINTELPRO counterintelligence program. That's what it stood for. And that was actually instituted to take down Garvey. And they did that in every aspect because, as I said, with the Yarmouth, that was the first Black-owned, Black-manned cruise ship line in history. Like, literally, it was owned and operated by all Black people. Like, this was Black excellence at its best.
The original soul plane.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was, the original soul plane. And it was a little bit janky like that, too. Like, it happened because, you know, a lot of the people that were trusted and put in situations were actually plants from the FBI. So some of the captains, some of the crew members, like one of the captains actually, you know, really was one of the reasons why the Black Star Line did go bankrupt, because they had him buying ships that were not seaworthy. So there was a lot of things where a lot of the money was mishandled because they had people that were sabotaging. One of the things that J. Edgar Hoover said in his October the 11th, 1919 memo was that there was nothing that Garvey did nothing wrong. There was nothing that they can get him on, but he did think that they could possibly take him down based off of a clause that he could be deported as an undesirable alien, because Garvey was here from Jamaica. He was not a naturalized citizen yet. And what they did was they declined his naturalization applications every chance they got. Every time that he would go out of the country to speak and to gather and, establish newer divisions of the UNIA, because it was a worldwide organization. So every time he went somewhere, they tried to block his re-entry back into the United States, but also tried to block his entry into some of these other countries. So they actually were actively trying to interfere with his ability to travel. They blocked his entry into several South American and Central American countries. They tried to force Cuba not to let him in. Costa Rica, they tried to tie him up at every port that they could. And there's documentations. I actually have the documentation from the Freedom of Information Act that the FBI records that show the correspondence of them reaching out to the consulates or the ports and actually trying to get them to do their bidding. So it's pretty deep. It's pretty deep.
If you're just joining us, we got the keeper of the jewels with us right here. Y'all can learn more about him at blackhistoryarchives.com. Tap in and support. We're going over just it was high level, but we're digging deep into some stuff, which I love, yeah. Right? The history of Marcus Garvey, the legacy, and just the impact that he's been able to create. You'll have questions. You can put questions inside of the chat. And the keeper of the jewels here will definitely get to it.
Definitely. All right. So now moving on to some of the other early contributions and accomplishments of Garvey. He created the Negro Factories Corporation, which under the Negro Factories Corporation were the millinery stores. That was actually the hat shops where they actually made their own hats and garments. They had dry cleaners. They had grocery stores. All those entities fell under the Negro Factories Corporation. And that was an amazing opportunity that they created, where they had over 1,000 jobs for African Americans. Just unparalleled industry. And this was all in Harlem. All this was based in Harlem. And they literally owned buildings all across Harlem. They had an actual hotel, which was called the Phyllis Wheatley Hotel. We had Liberty Hall, which one of the things going back in history, Garvey actually was inspired by the Irish labor movement. And their actual headquarters during that time was called Liberty Hall. And that's where he actually got the inspiration for making the headquarters for all the Black, every city had a Liberty Hall. So every city, or every division, had a Liberty Hall. And that was one of the things that he got inspiration from the Irish. And the Irish connection is actually I hate to say it like that, but the enslavers that actually enslaved his family. The Garvey name is actually Irish, of Irish descent. So that's kind of the connection that they had to Ireland. So let's see here. What elements of Garvey's economic vision can we apply today? Every single piece of it, every aspect of it. Literally, and we still are, even with the Nation of Islam, self-reliance. That was one of Garvey's major points in, even when it came down to the Black Bill of Rights. We wanted to have the option to have our own. We wanted to make sure that housing, like literally everything that we're fighting for today, equal treatment as it came to society, not being mistreated by the slave catchers, aka the police, which is where they descended from. So all these, things were in the Black Bill of Rights, and that's something that we'll definitely go into detail at a later date. But every single thing in Garvey's economic vision can be applied today. Now, the next piece this is number 9 in our. I think I'm doing 12. I can't remember what the number is, but we just flowing. It doesn't even matter.
Yeah, we're good.
But point number 9. This was the parent body construction loan, and what this was the UNIA actually sent over, specifically Marcus Garvey commissioned a group of delegates that were sent over because at the time the king or president of Liberia had gifted Garvey land in Liberia for basically a headquarters for us to actually start to establish a colony or first state in Africa. And through this parent body construction loan, they actually raised the money to send one of the ships over along with the delegation with engineers and all the equipment and everything to actually start breaking ground and surveying everything so that we can actually build the first colony for Black people to repatriate. Now, one of the things that has been misconstrued is that he wanted all Black people to go back to Africa, and they surmised this movement as the Back to Africa movement. Physically, he was not trying to get all Black people to repatriate and to get up and leave America and go to Africa. As we know still today, he said there were some people that were not worthy, some Black people that were not worthy of going because they had a white mind. Meaning that they were literally brainwashed to the point of not being any good as it related to contributing to the culture in a good way. And we're kind of just doing the bidding of, the enslaved mind, or what we refer to as the, oh God, what was the name of the book? Or it was like a little pamphlet that somebody put together.
Yeah, you got a lot of information. It'll flow.
Yeah, I got a lot in my head.
A lot.
But it was actually an experiment that was done by a professor. It's called the what you call it letters?
The Willie Lynch letters?
Willie Lynch, yes, Willie Lynch. So that was actually an experiment that was put out. I want to say it was in the 60s by a professor. That was not actually something that was that went out. The philosophy and everything behind it was, at the core of, white supremacy and the transatlantic slave trade. But that was actually a piece that the professor had put together, who's still, I believe the gentleman is still alive, actually. I can't remember his name at the time, at this time. But that was part of the, the rhetoric of slave owners and everything. So we had that mindset. So Garvey already knew that some people were just not worthy of going, and worthy of being representation of, our people for this new colony, this new movement, this new venture that was going to be all about Blackness, putting Black first as it related to the business. And that was one of the things that he really resonated with and that inspired him with Up From Slavery for Booker T. Washington, because he knew that every single one of these trades were going to be necessary in building a nation. So that was one of the things there.
Yeah, and I want to kind of go back to or clarify the comment of being whitewashed or certain folks aren't worthy of going to Africa. I do want to make sure students or parents watching understand that we're not necessarily saying that there's one way to be Black. There's not one way to be African, but there is a pro-Black or African-centric mindset. So can you kind of just, reiterate that?
Yeah. So really what it was as we kind of covered earlier, as it related to the divide amongst Black America at that time, you had people that were integrationists that really just wanted to depend on, and integrate in white society, and which proved kind of to be counterintuitive, because at that time we had for the next 5 years during this time period, from let's say from 1919 up to about 1920. We'll say 1925. That was a huge time for Black businesses. And partially that was because of segregation. Because we were not allowed to do, to go into white stores. We had to have our own businesses and insurance companies. All these industries were, that's how you had a Black Wall Street. That's how you had a Durham, North Carolina. That's how you had Atlanta, which was Auburn Avenue. That's how you had Rosewood, which was down in Florida. You had all the Tulsa, which was Greenwood out in the West. So you had all these different areas that had these thriving things because white people said that we could not be a part of their society. So we created these industries, these businesses, and that was one of the things that he saw was going to be the only way that we would be able to, one, keep money in our community, and two, be in control of our destiny. And the other side, which was actually funded by white people under the guise that they would basically do what they wanted them to do. You can focus on, businesses. You can't focus on economics, per se. So that was one of the things that the NAACP in the early days, and the NAACP didn't get a black president until the 90s, I believe it was. That was Spingard. The actual award that they gave, the highest award that they gave, the Spingard Award, which was a white Jewish man who was the president of the NAACP at the time. So the Niagara movement was actually heavily funded by white benefactors. And after it transitioned from the Niagara movement, because it was in, Niagara Falls is where they met and everything. So they named it the Niagara Movement. And then from there, it became the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And at that time, the main people that were represented during that time were of a lighter hue. There was a color divide here, which we still have, but it's not as bad, but it still exists, and that all came from, enslavement. You had your, what was considered your house slaves, and then you had your field slaves. The field slaves, of course, would be darker because they worked in the sun. Those of a lighter hue, which tend to be the children of the enslaved, tend to be lighter. And those were the ones that were kept closer inside the house because they felt like it was easier for them to assimilate into society. And that was just the way of that time. So that divide existed, and that continued on. And that was one of the reasons why those early folks that I told you about, W.B. Du Bois, Chandler Owens, A. Philip Randolph, all of them kind of had that divide because they believed that we needed white people and white benefactors in order to be able to survive. And Garvey didn't necessarily believe that. He wanted us to be independent and knew that if we had those ties, they would still have a control over us because, how do you expect to get away from your oppressor when your oppressor is the one that's funding you and is in control of your purse strings, in control of all your industries, just like now? Garvey realized that we lived in colonies and not communities. Communities are actually controlled by those that actually live in it. A colony is controlled by everybody that's outside of it. And that's what we live in still today, our colonies. And that was what he was trying to get away from, us being colonized everywhere we are. Like you can think about it now, like Chicago, all these areas, every black area. And you think about the, I was about to get on a tangent. I was about to go there for Philly. I was about to talk about Move, but all of these things, all of our areas are controlled by external forces. And that's what Garvey was trying to get us out of, essentially. So the ones that actually were integrationists and actually wanted to rely on and were being funded by white benefactors, that was, those were the undesirables that he was more so talking about, that I related, where he said not everybody's worthy of going because they were just kind of doing the quote unquote master's bidding at the time. So those were the ones that were, more so wanted to integrate into white society for status. Yeah. Let's just keep it real.
No, thank you for breaking that down. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And then also I do want to mention, let's go back to the other slide real quick. The first slide. Not the first slide, excuse me, the previous slide. For that also, just kind of going into more of how I told you how people have erroneously categorized or surmised the movement that Garvey was trying to do as the Back to Africa movement. He was not trying to get all black people to pack up and leave. What he was trying to do, and his ultimate goal, was to actually unite black people with Africa mentally. Because during the transatlantic slave trade, our identity, our history, our language, everything had been stolen from us. And his whole thing was getting everybody to realize that there was an African diaspora. We all stem from it. The only reason why we're coming from different places was that we were dropped off at those places. So there was no such thing. He didn't want the divide to be that there was, oh, I'm not doing this because I'm Jamaican. You're not Jamaican. You just happen to be dropped off in Jamaica. You're an African. And the same thing across literally Central South America, Belize, Costa Rica, Hispaniola, which is, Dominican Republic and Haiti. Cuba, all of these, all these are just different destinations that we were dropped off along the way. And he wanted everybody to realize that our history, our home, he said you have China for the Chinamen, you have Italy for the Italians, you have Ireland for the Irish. He said you have Japan for Japanese, but we need Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. Those that were at home, meaning on the continent, and those abroad, which were all the scattered, children of the diaspora, which is all of us. And that's really what he was trying to do, was to unite us mentally back with home first. Because when you have a home, you have somebody that can actually speak out and, demand certain things on your behalf as a descendant, as a citizen, as somebody that comes from this particular place. And that's what we never had, was a home. We never could, because of how we were scattered and sold and bred and moved, we didn't have a particular place to call home. But we knew that we descended from Africa, and that's where he wanted us to go mentally first. Because once you can claim your history, you reclaim that legacy. You reclaim the greatness and realize who you are based off of what you've already accomplished. And that's part of the mission that I hold today as the Keeper of the Jewels, to remind us of our greatness. Remind us that we are those that created the first civilization on the face of this planet. There was none before there was you.
Literally.
And I want you to make sure that you know that and claim that history, because that's the only way that we can pull ourselves out of the situation we find ourselves, is realizing that there's no need to ask for our rights. When you realize you are the original human, you demand your rights. You don't need to ask. So that's where we are now. That's the importance of everything that Garvey was trying to impart in us, which he still leaves to us today. So know who you are, reclaim your history, and that's the first way to getting up from slavery.
Yeah.
Mental enslavement, physical, all of that, because after slavery went out in one form, we were the first stock market. We literally were the first stock market.
Yep.
The stock market exchange was built on us and selling us as commodities. After they could no longer sell our bodies as commodities, they actually switched over to this invisible system that we have now, which is all the different companies and stuff like that, but we were the first. And once they outlawed that, per se, on paper, not really by deed, but they then put in different amendments that allowed that the only way that slavery could happen again was if you had violated the law. And that was one of the things that the prison system is. That's slavery 2.0. Where now, if you're charged with any type of infraction, you now have all your rights stripped and you are legally able to be enslaved. So,
yeah, I'm
got off on a tangent, but it was an important tangent.
Very, very important. I think growing up, I think we're exposed to the negative stereotypes of Africa and just negative portrayals of what Africa looks like, what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So I think growing up as a Black man, as a Black person, you detach yourself from what they teach you.
They told us it was a jungle. They told it was backwards, but then they also didn't tell us that every major what would you call it, kingdom, if you will, they all came to Africa to train. They came to Alexandria, Timbuktu. We created the first universities on the face of the planet. Like, there is nothing that we did not start that exists now. And that's the part that we have to realize. And that's one of the things that they did. They successfully kept us apart. They told us it was jungles and it was uncivilized here, but at the same time, they were vacationing and trying to colonize. Every rich mineral literally comes from Africa. Things that actually operate and keep these cell phones going, are actually mined in Africa. There is nothing that does not come from us that literally does not make this world turn. But we don't get the credit for it. We've never had. The first toilets were in ancient Egypt or Kemet. Everything that you can think of, the first mirrors, the first lighting system, all these things, the first medical instruments that you still use in the operating room today were created by Imhotep. The one that created the first pyramid. At the time, it was a step pyramid. And then from there, it evolved to the pyramids that they still can't figure out how we built, based off of metaphysics and just the African mind.
Aliens, you didn't hear?
Right, exactly. They'd rather credit aliens than to credit us for the ingenuity that we've had. everything that they got now, even down to the super soaker, that came from a black mind. You know, there's nothing that we didn't create. You know, we got the gas mask. That's Garrett Morgan. You know, he also created the light. You know, stoplight. You know, then we had, you know, black folks that Edison gets credit for the actual light bulb. That was a black man that was working for him that actually created that. You know, we can trace everything. Eli Whitney, who got credit for the cotton gin, a black man actually created that. You know, tried to make his work a little bit lighter. You know, so we've always been creating since birth. You can look at a black child. As soon as they come out, we up here moving our heads. We're able to reach for stuff. You know, it takes, and this is just science. You can actually look up some of the actual studies. Black children literally are more mobile at an earlier age and actually show more signs of intelligence at an earlier age. You know, for a black child to be now not even a month old, weeks old, and they're holding up their head. You know, they're able to get the motor skills, starting to move their hands and actually being able to grasp things. You know, these are things that are signs of greatness. And one of the things that we realize that if trauma can be passed down, guess what also can be passed down?
Yep.
Intelligence. You descend from the best and brightest minds that ever graced the face of this planet. So it's time to reclaim your greatness. Time to reclaim your history, your legacy. And also, once you know what you've done, it gives you the trajectory of what you can do. There's nothing that we have not been able to create in our minds. So whatever you can create and conceive in your mind, you can manifest in your reality. Look at the 7 wonders of the world. You have literally in the pyramids of Giza, they're still trying to figure out how we made this. There's nothing that you cannot do if you put your mind to it. If you can see it in your mind's eye, you can create it. And that's what we've done for millennia. There was nobody before us. Like literally since the beginning of time. Everybody has, even all the scientists literally have acknowledged before there was ever anybody of any other hue. The first was black, were the originals.
We gotta keep it going, but if you feeling inspired, if you feeling like you come from greatness, if you feeling energized from what Eric has been saying so far, just put some love inside the chat. Just put greatness, right? Put greatness inside the chat.
Let us know you with us. Let us know you with us.
Let us know that you're feeling the amazing legacy that you come from. All right, we got three more facts, I think, but just go ahead and put greatness inside the comments, inside the chat, if you are feeling the energy from the keeper of the jewels. Definitely appreciate you. This has been good. I'm nerding out over here. I love it.
I'm enjoying this. This has been a long time coming. I really appreciate you for your patience. I love what you're doing. I love everything that you guys stand for. So I definitely want to say that publicly. You are a vital, important part of educating our people, uplifting us, and getting us to where we need to go. So I appreciate you. I salute you for your dedication, and I salute you for being a jewel keeper.
Look, I'm trying to get on your level, but I appreciate you as well. You're a scholar, you're a gentleman, and just thank you for saying that. I do receive that. I do accept that. I appreciate it. All right.
So number 10. Did you know that Marcus Mosiah Garvey and Amy Jakes Garvey had 2 sons? Marcus Garvey Jr., who just recently passed away in 2020, and Julius Winston Garvey, Dr. Julius Winston Garvey. He wasn't a doctor back then, but he is a cardiothoracic surgeon, and he is still alive. This picture here is actually monumental because this picture was taken in March of 1940. Marcus Garvey had his first stroke in January of 1940. So this picture was the first time that he actually got to see his children in 3 years. During this time, World War, was it 1 or 2? 1 was going on. So it restricted actual travel. So he had his first stroke in January, as I said. And at the time he had moved to England in 1935. His family did join him, but his son, the oldest one that you see there on the left, that's Marcus Jr., he actually was stricken with rheumatoid arthritis. So from the dampness and everything in London. So the family had to move back to Jamaica to actually make sure that he could walk. He was in braces on his legs and everything. Just the dampness was terrible. Remember, that came from a tropical island with sun and everything. So it just had really detrimental effects on Marcus Jr.'s body. And so the family actually left and moved back to Jamaica. And Garvey stayed there because at the time there was a lot of interference between the local government in Jamaica after he was deported in 1927. So once he got back to Jamaica in 1927, after being pardoned by Calvin Coolidge, the president here, he took up residence back in Jamaica. But a lot of the members and everything across the world that were trying to still support him, they were sending money, but the local governments were stealing it. Because at the time, they would send cash. So he says, you know, the government, America was interfering through the postal system. So they were stealing it. And also they had people that were in Jamaica that was a part of, you know, the different parishes, but still under English rule. He said they can do that there as a colony, but if he went to the mainland England, that he wouldn't have to worry about a lot of the theft and stuff like that. So that's why he chose to go to mainland England instead of, you know, one of their territories, which was Jamaica at the time. So that's why he made that move. So he stayed there because he was right. They didn't interfere with the sovereignty there in England as they did on the colony of Jamaica at the time. So he was able to continue on, you know, moving the headquarters of the UNIA to London after it was in Jamaica. Because after he got deported, he moved the headquarters to Jamaica, back where he was, and then they moved to London. So the parent body now had reconstituted in London, and that's where the headquarters was, you know, up until his death. And that was why he stayed there. So during that time of, you know, the family moving back for Junior's health, the World War happened. And one of the things that was going on that time, you had, there was a shortage of rubber because they needed all those things for the war. Yeah. So record companies had to stop creating records during the time, even though there were still some that actually were sneaking around creating records during that time. But it was illegal at the time, technically also.
Those the first mixtapes?
Right, exactly. That's pretty much what it was for that day. And one of the record companies that's that was big impact but small run was Savoy Records, which a lot of gospel, R&B, jazz, blues artists came from. A lot of our artists, you know, by that time, Savoy Records had bought out Bebop Records, which actually had all the Dizzy Gillespie records. Literally everybody you can think of, Miles Davis, all of those guys were all on those labels. So all these things were affected during the World War, and it restricted travel. So at that time, Garvey's family couldn't come over and visit anymore. And in January of 1940, he had his first stroke. He had high blood pressure. The stress of the world, you know, was on his shoulders. He had just endured being in jail. There were so many different things that happened. And, you know, so he winds up 1940. Actually, I'm going to have to take off my earbuds. Let me go ahead and switch over to the regular audio. Can you hear me okay?
We can still hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. So let me see where I was. I was talking about...
yeah, just gotten out of jail or endured going to jail.
So yeah, going over all that stuff. So he had just, you know, he had been deported and well, let me go back. 1922, they had actually started the whole process of, you know, indicting him for mail fraud. And what this was that they claimed that he was selling stocks for ships that he did not own. Now, I told you there was 5 ships that he actually had and acquired. So there were inner workings that were trying to sabotage everything. So the ship in particular that was in question was the last ship, and I want to say it was Kennewa, but don't quote me on that. But that was the last ship that he was acquiring. He had actually put down a $25,000 deposit on this particular ship. Anytime you put a deposit down on something, that's the beginnings of ownership.
Right.
And they did not give him the credit. They tried to deal, but if you go back and look in the records, which I have, and I went to the maritime records and actually found the receipts for his deposits. So it all was a ruse. He was railroaded by the government, by J. Edgar Hoover. And the judge that happened to be presiding over everything was a member and a board member of the NAACP. And I told you that the NAACP was actually partly behind the Garvey Must Go campaign. So he was in the pockets of the NAACP. And unfortunately, they railroaded us just like they do today. So that was partially the takedown. And it was based off of an empty envelope that they said in there had an advertising for the ship that he didn't own, which he actually had already put the deposit down. And the people that were a part of it, it even went to as far as in possibly having the Attorney General of New York, who was the one that was prosecuting the case. He actually was involved in that as well. So it was just a deep weaved web of just craziness. Any tactics that they could use against him, they did. And Garvey, being the black man that he was, Garvey actually fired his lawyer and represented himself.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty monumental. But he wound up losing. And it's so funny because the charges that were actually ultimately used to put him away, they were actually dismissed. And because all the time and everything and the government intervening in it, he still was actually convicted on charges that were actually thrown out. So, the same way the injustice system works today, that's the same way it was then for Garvey. And unfortunately, the hopes and dreams of Black America were crushed with that. And you had thousands and thousands of people in the States and also across the world, hundreds of thousands of people that actually signed petitions and everything. Like, it's amazing. I actually saw a lot of the letters in the archives that were sent from all across the world. You had even celebrities had signed petitions, and everybody was fighting to try to get Garvey released from prison. And a lot of people don't know, he started off in the Tombs in New York City, and then he was placed in the federal penitentiary in Atlanta. So here is where he actually did his time. And in 1927, because of a lot of things that were going on and a lot of push for his release, and it was also about to be re-election time as well for Calvin Coolidge, they actually got him released, and Calvin Coolidge pardoned him. And a part of the pardon was that he had to be deported back to Jamaica and could no longer come back to the States. So that's how that happened. They sent him back on a fruit company. I want to say it was Chiquita Banana, but it's one of the parent companies, I believe it was, of Chiquita, the Chiquita Banana fruit company that actually provided the means of transportation for him to get back. It was I want to say it was the Salamanca was the name of the ship. And they actually sent him back out of the port of New Orleans, and that was the last great gathering of thousands of people. He had a crowd of at least 5,000 people that had showed up to see him off, from these shores. And they said they waved until they could no longer see him in sight anymore. And he had a hero's welcome once he got back to Jamaica later on. After they disembarked from America. And that didn't end Garvey's career or thing in politics. He actually created the first political party in Jamaica that was by the people, and that was the People's Party. And he continued that, and then eventually moved to London for the reasons that I told you about the interference with the the local government and also with funds.
Right.
And, so getting to 1940 now, Garvey died on June the 10th, 1940, after reading in the newspaper an erroneous newspaper article of his death, announcing his death. Yeah. And due to the World War, that was the one when his family was unable to attend the actual funeral. So he was interred. His wife, Amy Jakes Garvey, actually coordinated with his secretary, who was in London, via the mails and also via what do you call that? Western Union. What's that called? Telegraphs back then. So they communicated via Western Union, sending stuff over the wire. And that's how she got information of, getting everything. And they were trying to pay off debts and everything to be able to pay his funeral. And eventually he was interred in a cemetery what do you call it? Not a cemetery, but a mausoleum in London. And in 1964, his body was reclaimed by the country of Jamaica and was reinterred in 1964 in their National Heroes Park. And he was declared a national hero for the country of Jamaica.
As he should.
Yeah. This is actually a picture of the actual reinterment in 1964. So you'll see that picture right there. And that's where his remains are to this day, at the National Heroes Park in Jamaica.
It is. So we are at the home. We got one more fact. If you're watching on the replay, if you're watching live, let us know which fact you enjoyed the most. And if you gotta replay, gotta rewind to get the jewels, feel free. But let us know which one you is really connected with the most, or which aspect of Marcus Garvey's leadership, his strategy, his genius we should be using today. Right? If you could just take away one bit of wisdom that you want to see Black leaders or folks do today to build our community, what would that be? Right? Now, number 12. Brrr, get a drum roll and let's show it. Bow.
Did you know that Marcus Garvey's youngest son is still alive? His name is Dr. Julius Winston Garvey, and he is one of my mentors and one of my biggest supporters. So that's actually a picture of Dr. Garvey and myself a few years ago when I went up to actually interview him. And we built an amazing relationship. When I was considering doing a PhD program at Emory, he actually wrote my recommendation letter. And of course, my research at the time was going to be on his father, so it made an even bigger impact. Oh. But I've put that PhD program off because of the work that I'm already doing and making my own strides and don't necessarily need it. But probably later on, I'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And for the folks that are just joining or maybe didn't catch it at the beginning,
he is. Let me see. He is. This is 2022. Dr. Garvey is now 89 years old. Mm. He's the only living child of Marcus Garvey. His brother died. That's what I was referring to. His brother died in 2020. And he was 90 years old at the time.
And does he have memories of his father?
They don't have much memories of their father because their Junior was 10 years old when their father died, and Dr. Garvey was 7 years old. So they have some memories, but not much. They were very young. They remember the time that they were living in Jamaica. Excuse me, not in Jamaica, in London. Mm-hmm. They remember, just the play dates and all that stuff that they had, the different places they went with their father, playing in the yard, while they were all together in London. And then they also remember how Junior's health had declined and how hard it was for him during that time too. So it was, it was one of those bittersweet moments, Then once they were went back to Jamaica, they got, the different letters and stuff like that. And I have some copies of some of the letters that they got from their father and back and forth. So it's really amazing. And to show Dr. Garvey some of these artifacts and everything, like it's amazing. I filmed all that stuff. We filmed for a couple hours, and his reaction to some of the pieces, and then our phone conversations where I actually read him some of the letters that their father sent them,
Mhm.
and the letters that they sent him as well. It's really really amazing. But that particular picture, going back, slide 11, I think it was. That picture there, yeah, the one right before this one. That was their father's first time seeing them in 3 years. Oh no, it's the one before that. I think it's 10. I'm sorry. Yep, right there. So that is their father's first time seeing them after his stroke. So he had a stroke in January. That was the one that kind of partially debilitated him. He was partially paralyzed, and a lot of people didn't know. And he kind of hid it, but still kind of made public appearances. Would drive around the car or be driven around, and he would also take walks in the parks that he used to speak at, in Hyde Park and different places in London. And they just thought he was rushing and on his way to doing something, but it affected his speech, so he really didn't talk to people when he was out. So they didn't even know that he was going through all this at that time. But a couple months later, in June, so he got this picture of them in March, which really made him cry. It's actually documented that when he saw his boys, he actually cried when he saw this picture here. And 3 months later, he died. He was reading the newspaper, and one of his enemies in the States had erroneously, made an announcement of his death. And yeah, he read that, and that's actually what caused his second stroke, and which led to his death.
Wow.
So that's how.
So I wanna, yeah, hold on. I just wanna let's clap it up right here, right? Whether you're watching live on the repeat, I know Eric will be able to hear and feel the energy. So make sure y'all clap it up. This has been literally, I think, a master class in Marcus Garvey. I know it's still very high level for a historian like yourself, but I know for me, and I can imagine for other folks, this is a lot of stuff that we don't learn about Marcus Garvey.
Mhm.
And I know I'm going to put up your contact
And
information.
there's so much more. Like literally, there's so much more information to cover. Like
No.
this is just a scratch on the surface. I really didn't go, and I figured it was going to be a timing issue, but I was really trying to get like 17 facts in, and I see we're already at an hour and a half. So there was no way we would have been able to get in this information. So I'm glad, I'm glad I titled it an introduction, because
Oh, yeah.
it wouldn't have done any justice for the magnitude of achievements and what he actually did.
Yeah. And if folks do want to learn more about Marcus Garvey, do you have a book that you recommend, a documentary that you recommend, sources on your website, anything like that?
I'm actually working on all the above. I'm working on a book. I might even put together a quick ebook
Mhm.
after this. I just did. I really was setting it up for about 17, because today was the 17th, his birthday or whatever. 17 facts or whatever about Garvey. So I might put together an expanded version of this presentation
Yeah.
and put it in the book format, ebook format, so that people can actually start, digesting more information, and then just kind of grow it. And eventually, I'm going to put out the definitive work on Garvey, as far as in for a biography in the sense, and uncover different aspects of his life. There has not been one official biography on Garvey, but there's been many, many amazing volumes that have been done, but they're out of print. Um, Robert Hill, a professor that was out in the University of California, and went to Duke, and like he's put together a 12 plus volume installations. Basically, you might as well call them encyclopedias, but they're out of print mostly now. And that covers the works of him in America, in Jamaica, in Africa, all that. So so much information out there. Then there's so I said Hill, Rupert Lewis, who's a actual historian out of Jamaica. He has some great books on them. He was also Mrs. Garvey, Amy Jakes Garvey, the wife, second wife and mother of his children. He actually was one of her assistants at the end of her life when she was putting out, because literally, and that's one of the major things I should have put on the slide, and I'm mad I didn't put that. The actual archivist and librarian and torchbearer of Garvey's legacy was actually his wife. Amy Jakes Garvey did everything. Literally, she put everything in writing. So even while he was imprisoned here in the federal penitentiary in Atlanta, she actually compiled the books. She put all the information out there. She transcribed his speeches, gathered everything. She literally was the archivist of the Garvey movement. She's one of the mothers of the Pan-African movement and literally kept it going until she died. And she didn't die until the 70s. So even 30 years after, he had died, she carried on the legacy. She literally wrote all the books. Garvey didn't write those books. She did. She compiled it from his work, but she is the one that actually carried on his legacy and made sure people knew who he was. She was the first librarian archivist. She was the first PR person. Like, she did all of these things and literally churned them out. She was putting it out. She started off as his secretary, and then they wound up getting married and everything. And she was literally his co-laborer, and she was the Garvey after Garvey had left.
So the legend is true. Beside every great black man, is a great black woman, black queen.
Yeah. Like, she literally is the reason why people know and remember Garvey now. The sole reason. Like, I can't give her enough props. Like, she literally documented everything. Everything. But I tell you, this woman kept copious notes. She literally kept different notebooks and different clippings of every newspaper article that was ever written on her husband. Like, this woman was the archivist. She was the original keeper of the jewels. She was the original keeper of the jewels. And it's because of her that we have all this information still today, and have a really 3D version of who Marcus Garvey was because of her work. So we got to give a shout out to Mother Amy Jakes Garvey, because she is what held it down and kept his memory and history alive. Like, when I tell you, her archives were absolutely amazing. Like, later on, like, we'll go through it and I'll show you some of it. But she kept every single clipping, newspaper article, magazine article. She wrote to folks if they got it wrong, if they put out lies or whatever. She wrote them to correct them. Like, she was everything, absolutely everything. And we owe a great debt of gratitude and everything to her, because without her, his memory, his contributions, everything would be lost. Like, she even kept a copy of the original transcripts to show how he got railroaded. So right now, the campaign that his son actually has going on is trying to get an exoneration for his father or presidential pardon, is because of the records that his mother kept. Like, it's amazing.
So, shout out to everybody who just keeps track of Black history. Yourself, you said Mother Amy
Jakes Garvey. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love it. But if folks want to get in contact with you, they want to keep engaging with the jewels. I'll display the slide, but if you don't mind giving it some life, give it some energy, where can they find you on social
Absolutely.
media?
You can find me. I'm on social media. I've dedicated now to continuing putting out jewels. You can find me on Instagram. My personal Instagram is where I post everything. So you'll see everything about my work. So I work in film and television. I'm a veteran of Black Hollywood. I've been in film and television for 17 years. And I actually worked for the company that I entered in Black Hollywood with, and that's Tyler Perry Studios. I'm actually here in my office at the studios. I'm doing this live with you guys. So you'll see, just from my life in entertainment, my work in music through the years. I'm almost a 30-year veteran in the music industry. Started off working in gospel music early on when I was 12 years old, and became a booking agent, and eventually managing different artists. And then I launched once I graduated. No, I actually didn't graduate at that time, but eventually, once I came to Atlanta and matriculated at Morehouse, I created my booking agency, and that's where I made most of my money, and actually what allowed me to acquire all these amazing Black history artifacts. And so you'll see on my Instagram page that at the Mr. Majestic, that's my personal page. You'll see it right there. You'll see, my music stuff. You'll see just different stuff from my archives. My archives literally goes back about 40 years personally, almost. And then the historical part of the archives go back to the 15th century. So it's a wide range. You'll see some of the artifacts. So you'll get a lot of engagement there. And then specifically for the history, you'll see on the Instagram, that's the Black History Instagram, is the Keeper of the Jewels. You'll see that there. For those that are on TikTok, you can follow me on TikTok, the Keeper of the Jewels. For all those on YouTube, you can go ahead and subscribe, and you'll see a lot of the content that I have on YouTube, and that's at youtube.com/the Keeper of the Jewels. And finally, you can go to the website, that's Black History Archives, or thekeeperofthejewels.com. Yeah. So everything now is branded The Keeper of the Jewels. Nice. So you can find me everywhere under that. And let's stay in contact. If you love Black history, everything Black, you can find the content on my pages. And also, you can find me here with Play Black Wall Street. This is the first of 2 courses that we're doing. And I look forward to building and growing and getting to know everybody in the community.
Shay. Yeah, we appreciate you, Eric, and just amazing information that you have. I don't know how you remember all those dates, all those names, all those people.
No, it's crazy.
That's a superpower for real.
And I tell you, I question it all the time. From our conversation, just getting to this point, it's like for someone like me that really is dedicated and really has dedicated my life and my resources to preserving Black history, I always want to make sure I'm doing everything at the highest level possible and making sure I'm sharing the information. So for me, as a student of history, I never think I know enough. There's instances like these in these conversations where I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess I got it. Just being humble though, because you always want to share correct information. There's so much erroneous information and so much bogus information that's out there that it's enough of that. We want to make sure we're honoring our ancestors and their legacy. So just giving the best information possible. And anytime we get a chance to be in front of people and share, you want to uplift the people. That's the most important part. You want to make sure you're making an impact. And I take that so seriously. That's why this was a long time coming, but we made it, pulled it together, and hopefully the people will be blessed and edified and definitely enriched. That's my goal. That's what drives me.
Yeah, no, they will 100%. If you're watching on the live or on the replay, again, we just had the Keeper of the Jewels teach us an introduction live class of the life, legacy, and impact of Marcus Garvey. We will be doing a part 2 of this, not necessarily about Marcus Garvey, but we'll be doing a part 2, bringing the Keeper of the Jewels back to tell y'all some Black history of California. I know a majority of our Play Black Wall Street Academy folks and IMI folks are from California, just like myself, right? Shout out to Cali, shout out to the West Side. Much love to Atlanta. We coming to you in 2 weeks. I'm gonna holla at you.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that folks within California can still connect to their Black history, their roots here, as well as connect with it abroad. So feel free to tap into that. You will be updated. If you didn't know, 3 levels of membership within IMI: the All Access Pass, the Play Black Wall Street Academy, and the Black Studies Snacks. Feel free to tap in at any level. Of course, one last time, in case you didn't get it, make sure you tap in with the Keeper of the Jewels on Instagram at the Keeper of the Jewels, and tap into his YouTube channel at the Keeper of the Jewels as well. All right. Everybody, hope you stay healthy. Brother Eric, again, much appreciated, man. That was beautiful. Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate you. I really appreciate you. And thank you for your patience. Thank you for sharing your platform.
Yeah.
And hopefully the people enjoy. And it's only up from here.
All the way up. Let's do it. All right. Night, y'all.